Let me say a few outrageous things, but I can't help it and first react to what Martin Wolf has said, which reminded me of the famous statement, it's the economy, stupid, but nevertheless, I hope that the fate of the European Union will not be decided by economists. First of all. Secondly, Diana Pinto has referred to the upcoming soccer game on Friday between Germany and Greece. I am an obsessive soccer fan, and I think that for the sake of the European unification, one should abolish the European Championship, because so much nationalism comes out of that tournament that those who are Europeans should consider abolishing it. Now, I realize that Israel is not yet a member of the European Union. And by the way, I'm not so sure if we were to decide whether we want to become members, full members, or not, what the outcome of such a referendum will be. The government of Israel, in the course of the years, has never had a strategic discussion as to where would we like to end up with the European Union. But Danny, in his introductory remarks, said that we should not act as a bystander and look with trepidation as to what is currently unfolding. Let me make brief points on that issue, and then I'll make a few other general observations as to what should be the best outcome under the following scenarios for Israel. Is a disintegration of the European Union in the interest of Israel? Is a muddling through crisis management sort of mode also in our interest, or ultimately the unification, the political union? And I'm not so sure what the politicians in Israel will respond to those scenarios. If you take from the political viewpoint, as Danny has already said, Israeli-European relationship has been, over the course of the last at least 4 decades, quite difficult. And we all felt that the European attitude towards Israel in particular and towards the Middle East generally has been biased, not in our favor. At the same time, if the European Union theoretically were to disintegrate, then some Israelis will think that we are better served, because on a nation-by-nation basis, with the enlargement of the European Union, we are better off because our bilateral relationship, hence also the national position on the outstanding Middle Eastern problem, is tilting a bit to our favor. So the disintegration from the political point of view might make sense for some. I, however, am not of that opinion. I'm a student of European integration as such. I look at it, especially nowadays, as we are in a period of transition as far as international politics is concerned. And I think that Israel should have a keen interest in the unification of the European Union, and broadly speaking, in more closer transatlantic relations, because we consider ourselves to be part of the West. And in the 21st century, if the West will not stay together, the West will become irrelevant in the big scheme of things. So altogether, as I said, I think that it is in our interest to see the West, and we part of the West, much more stronger than is currently the case. Now, in addressing briefly my comment on it's the economy stupid, I think that the European idea did not start at the end of the day with the economics, but with the politics. One observation, Martin has said that we are currently witnessing a severe crisis. Diana Pinto mentioned the word fear. And I privately believe that it will have to get worse before it might get better. As you look at the European Union at the beginning, I mean, it was, and I am a great believer in the need in order to make the final move towards European unification, the need for a paradigm change. Now, the European idea came against the backdrop of a catastrophe of the Second World War and the combination of statesmen who drew the lesson from the Second World War and later also the Cold War and decided to take that paradigm change. Now, usually societies that are not with their back to the wall do not feel that they have to make such a decision. And watching the way that the European lack of leadership, more politicians rather than leaders, watching the way the ongoing crisis is unfolding in front of our eyes, and we are discussing all ways of crisis management, and Martin Wolf has also said a few things on that, to that effect. I think that the Europeans have not yet reached the point where they have no alternative and therefore have to move forward to that unification. So paradigm change in history as the idea of the European Union have to reach a certain ripeness. And my feeling that that has not yet been the case. A catastrophe, pointing out, can be of a political nature, can be of an economic nature, can be even of a military one, but leaving the military dimension aside, I don't think that neither the politics nor the economics are at this stage, at the stage where that paradigm change will have to take place. I think that the current crisis offers a chance for the European Union to discuss things that they were trying to evade for many years, and that is the question of the finalité. I'm sitting here, on the right of me is Martin Wolf from the United Kingdom, on the left of me is Diana Pinto from France, and further is Ambassador Michaelis. All three of them have different visions of what should the European Union end station look like. Speaking of vision, I'm reminded by the former Helmut Schmidt, the Chancellor, who said those who speak about vision should go and see a doctor because they felt that it has no place in politics. Nevertheless, I think that that offers a good chance, the current crisis for the Europeans, to get finally serious about what is the finalité. And I think that disintegration is not an option. More of the less muddling through is also not an option. So basically, you are left with the moving forward, the European unification, which will ultimately result in a political union. Does Europe currently have the right leadership? My answer for that is no. Will Europe have, at one point, the leadership before it will be too late? I don't know. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Shimon. I will now. I have about 30 questions just for myself, but I'll choose one each. Very briefly, please, madam and gentlemen. Very brief answers, and then we will allow a few questions from the floor. And I'd like to start with you, Diana, if I may. I was very intrigued by one of your remarks. You said that you believe that Europeans are prepared actually to pay a price in order to maintain Europe, to keep it alive. Are you really that sure? And could you give me an example? I mean, I've lived in Europe quite a long time, and I hear a lot of grumbling already now about the price of the price that we pay in order for us to be Europeans. And if the price will be a personal one, an economic one, will they really say, I'm prepared to do this for Europe, or will they say, no way, I'm not going to pay for some irresponsible Greek magnate who made bad politics?
Well, I really think if you look at the weaker elements of the European Union right now, there is a price that is already being paid. And there have been many articles about how the Greeks have sort of bent their back and said, well, we're going to come out of this. We'll go back to the land or eat less or certainly travel. There was a whole show in France showing the number of Porsches that were on sale from Greece that had been bought with credit. And I can tell you this because the number of used Porsches being bought in France right now is much higher than the stock available generally. So thanks to the European Union, they're being shipped from Greece to France, and then France will probably have to sell them to Germany at some point if it's not doing well. That's where they come back, so they'll be going, back zurück nach Heimat. Anyway, I think so. And the reason I say this is, if you look at the French case, Sarkozy managed to ram down pension reform in a country notorious for the number of demonstrations that had paralyzed in the past. There was a lot of demonstration, but people finally swallowed the pill. And
then they threw him out of office.
No, they threw him out. Well, all right. So I think it's a mistake to assume that Hollande is going to bring back retirement to much earlier years, like 60. It's completely wrong. It's part of the social justice system. People who started working at the age of 14, and who have paid social contributions that are practically 45 or 46 years of retirement pension payment are definitely entitled to go off at 60. I think that is part of the compact of a social justice, which I do not think leave many Europeans, even Germans, indifferent. So I even may imagine, in a crazy vision of the future, that trade unions might come back to life again across Europe, but more moderate, more modest trade unions as interlocutors in these contexts. A lot of screaming in the streets, but a reality principle that is coming to deal with people. People accept it.
Thank you. Martin, will there be a Europe without the euro? I mean, if the euro does collapse, where does that leave the European Union?
That wasn't the question I was expected to answer. I wanted to come on to Ambassador Michele's fascinating comments, because I was absolutely puzzled that he disagreed with anything I said, but I certainly disagreed with some of what he said. But so I hope we'll get to that, because it's very important to clarify the nature of the problem. However, on your question, so let's just take it as analytically as I can and pretend I'm a dispassionate outsider. I have taken the view throughout my writing on this that while I thought the euro in its present form, that is to say a euro that embraced both Northern and Southern Europe, was a tremendous mistake, that breaking it up is an almost unmanageable thing to do without causing extraordinary economic damage. Almost certainly a period in which the financial sector of Europe, which by the way is the largest banking sector in the world by far, ceases to function. And a period in which by its nature, if you were talking about a disintegration, I'm not talking about this actually happening, the central bank would cease to function, because whose central bank is it? Under those circumstances, we must assume, I think, a breakdown of the European economy. Remember that all the member countries do more vast amount of trade with one another, and this would affect the world. So first you have a depression, one. And two, you have the failure of what is effectively, Diana described it as the flag. I would describe it as the capstone of the European project. Like it or not, I cannot believe that in that situation, in which everybody would blame everybody else, or if I may put it in a very invidious way, many would blame Germany, and Germany would blame everybody else. I'm sorry, but that's, I think, is what would happen in that situation, fair or not. I don't see how the project would survive. So I do think the threat to the euro is existential for the European project. I imagine that all the leaders understand that, and that is why, in the end, I've consistently told Americans, almost all of whom believe the project will founder, that they are wrong. And I've written a column on this very recently saying they are wrong. The consequences of a disintegration are, I think, almost unmanageable. And that might, and that's a final point, even be true of the consequences of the exit of one country. It could create a fundamental transformation because it ends the proposition that it's irrevocable, and once it ceases to be credibly irrevocable, it becomes extremely difficult to hold the line on subsequent collapses. And this is not about, by the way, the economists aren't going to destroy this. It's the economy. The economy doesn't belong to economists. The economy belongs to everybody.
Thank you very much. That may not have been the question that you expected, but that was the answer that I hoped for. So double success. Andreas, I would like to ask you to briefly go back to the question of full integration. I quoted Jacques Attali yesterday, who gave a very short timeline. Seems difficult to imagine. But do you, as a staunch Europhile, do you believe that full integration in Europe is still the goal? Is it doable? And is it doable even beyond the current crisis situation in a kind of fuite en avant, what the French call running forward just in order to run away from the crisis? Is it still the goal that you believe in?
Personally, I do believe in that goal, and I always believed in it. You quoted the Humboldt speech, which was drafted in the year 2000, so that's a good 12 years ago. Then the question of the finalité was asked against the backdrop of the enlargement of the European Union.
It was before the enlargement, just let me point out.
It was before the enlargement. So the question was basically, are our institutions ready to function? Are we ready to function as a union with a membership of 27 that we are today? And some of the answers, at least an attempt was made to identify some of the answers. And I also did the same you did, Dan. I actually looked at the speech again because I had not read it for many, many years.
It's fascinating reading, I must say.
Before coming here, and it's really worth looking at the text. And some of the problems were really anticipated, problems we did not envisage at the time, because it was not the euro crisis that was foreseen, but certainly crisis as such was identified, and it was clearly stated that we have to move towards political union as European nations in order to face these difficulties. Now, starting from the present problem, I would simply say you cannot mutualize debt without mutualizing sovereignty. That is really the line you have to follow. If you accept that, even as a layman's economic analysis of the present crisis, then you know that you have to move towards integration. The big question really is whether the time that is available is enough, whether the powers within, the political powers within the European Union are strong enough to push this cart, which is so difficult to push into that direction. These are some of the important questions. But one remark, when looking at integration, I think one remark is very important, because Germany is not naive about this vision of what Shimon called the vision. The vision is not an abstract European entity which you can call a European federation. But it is a federation of nation states, as Jacques Delors called it in the late 90s when the discussion started. So we are not making the nation state disappear, but we will introduce as much function or as many functions in an integrated way as is necessary to run a supranational organization like the European Union in the 21st century.
Thank you.